In this video, we're going to put a texture on our table. I'll start by deleting 3 of the 4 legs. And I'll shift select the 1 leg in the top. I'm going to go to my material attribute. And I'll follow the color tab under base out to the create render node. And I'll click on checker. And I'll hit 6 on the keyboard if I don't see the texture show up immediately. With both of the pieces of geometry selected, I'm going to delete by type history, and I'm going to go to modify, freeze, transforms. I'll select the top first, holding down the space bar. I'm going to go to UV and click on automatic. I'll right-click in my viewport and return to my object mode for the geometry. I'm going to go to the UV editor. The UV editor can be gotten at the top of the application, very first choice, or you can hold down your space bar, go to UV, and choose UV editor there. If you choose to put it on your dock, you would hold Command-Shift, and you would go to UV editor. With the geometry selected, I'll click on it. And now I can see my tabletop distributed across the checkerboard pattern. I'll turn off the checkerboard pattern for a moment. And it's all in pieces, and they all are proportional to the sides of that cube shape, our tabletop. I want to sew them together, and I need to scale them within that checkerboard pattern, so Photoshop will see that UV line that will be generated once we bring it into Photoshop. I'll right-click and choose Edge, and I'll roll over one of the edges, and I'll go to Cut and Sew, and I'll choose Move and Sew. I want to do that with edges that share edges of other faces of this cube shape. I'll select this edge, and I'll hit G, or I'll go back and choose Cut and Sew, Move and Sew. G on the keyboard will let you repeat the previous function inside of Maya. As I start to build this, I'm going to right-click and choose UV Shell, and I'll select the shell I've been working on, and hitting W, I'll move it outside the parameters of the checkerboard, just so I can see where these pieces are a little bit more clearly. Once again, I'll return to Edge, and I'll select an edge, and I'll go to Cut and Sew, Move and Sew. Now this is the same as the dock on our user interface, in the sense that I can add the tools I need to a shelf that's specific to the UV editor. First, I would go to View, and I would click on next to Custom Shelf. And that will give you the extra gray area at top. And I can hold down Command-Shift, and now I can add my tools to my shelf inside my UV editor. So that's another option. I'll select an edge, click on Move and Sew, and I'm going to right-click now and go to UV Shell. I'll select everything that's been sewn together, and I'll move it to make sure all the pieces have been joined. I'll put the checkerboard on now, and with the shell selected, I'll hit R on the keyboard, and I'll scale it within the parameters of that checkerboard. I'm going to move my table shell outside the checkerboard pattern. And now we're going to texture the leg. I'll return to my object mode, deselect, select just the leg. Now what happens is with Maya, each time we apply a UV map, planar, automatic, or whatever, it always appears over the checkerboard pattern. So had I left the table there, I would have both these UV maps on top of each other, which makes it difficult to discern and to sew and move. With the leg selected, I'll hold down my space bar, I'll go to UV, and I'll choose automatic. And there are the sections that comprise the leg. I'm going to move and sew these as well. Right-clicking in my UV editor, I'll choose Edge, and I'll start to sew these pieces together. Now I'll return to my object mode once I have this shell comprised, and I'm going to right click, choose object mode, and I'm going to shift select both of them. And that shows me both of my UV maps. We have to get both of these UV maps into the checkerboard. So I'll start with the leg. I'll right click and choose shell. I'll select it and I'll move it in. Hitting R on the keyboard, I'll scale it. I'll select the tabletop, right click, UV shell, select it, hitting W, I'll move it into the checkerboard and scale it so that it fits. If any of these UV maps fall outside the parameters of that quadrant with the checkerboard, this will not be seen inside of Photoshop, so everything's got to be inside here. I'm going to right click and go back to my object mode and deselect. I'm going to shift select both of them in the object mode because if I'd left them in the editing form, I would not be able to go to image, UV snapshot. I'll put it in my project folder and source images, and I'll click on apply and close. Now we're ready to go into Photoshop.